Hey folks, Kevin here. Well, it's May 8th, 2020. I'm over in the work area, and today I thought I'd try and respond to a couple of questions that I've had about starting sweet potato slips the way that we do it here on our homestead. 2 years ago, I posted a video. I think it was a new way to propagate sweet potato slips in perlite, and I made a nice long video about the process that we went through. It was a really popular video on YouTube, and I got lots of questions from that. And so last year I created a video series, and I'll put links to both of these videos in the upper right hand corner. Excuse me. And the video series that I went through from the very beginning of the preparation of the sweet potatoes, putting them in a soilless mixture, and getting sweet potato slips to emerge from those sweet potatoes, peeling those off and starting those in a soilless mixture as well, and getting good root development, and everything went really well through the whole process. There was some sweet potato disease that I talked about in that video series, which you may find interesting, and everything went really great all the way through the whole process until after using up all of our fenced in areas on the property. I put the sweet potato slips into an area that was not adequately fenced off, so the deer got in there, the rabbits got in there and consumed all of the green foliage from the sweet potato slips that were really well rooted, and as a result they weren't able to develop to the point where they could start sending energy down into tubers and developing good sweet potatoes. So it was no yield from that crop, not as a result of the whole process, but at the end result where I planted those in an area where the deer and the rabbits got to them. So so there's a lot of explanation in that video series, and I still get questions about watering, how I do the watering with the sweet potato slips and all. And something I should state clearly, that this is context specific. We live in a very cold temperate climate. We live in Oswego, New York. The temperature outside right now is about 33, 34 degrees Fahrenheit. We have frost all the way up until about May 25th. That's when we start putting some of our transplants into the soil. The soil is still not warm enough for potatoes at that point, or sweet potato slips, so we try to get a head start, because we live in such a cold climate, by getting the sweet potatoes to produce their slips, then take those slips and get a good root development on those slips, so that they've got a good head start, because our soil is so cold this time of year. If you're in a warm climate, skip all of the steps that we do here. You could just take the sweet potatoes, stick them underneath the soil, pluck off the sweet potato slips as they get a couple of inches high, maybe 3 inches high or so, 3 to 4 inches high. Tear them off, stick them into your soil, and before long you'll have a really beautiful crop of sweet potatoes. The reasons that we go through all these steps is we're in a very cold temperate climate. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw my helmet cam on here, and we'll go over and we'll just look at the system that we're using right now. Okay, I've got the helmet cam on. When I start the sweet potatoes, I start them in 4 trays. This is our soilless mixture, the same soilless mixture that we would use for starting any of the seeds that we start in the house, in the work area here. The first thing I would say is I started my first trays. Now, in the series I did last year, I did in the house where the temperature is about high 70s to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Whereas over here in the work area, we're about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So I decided to use heat mats. Now these are cheaper heat mats that I really don't recommend. I have better heat mats on the other side there. But what I decided to do was to conserve energy. I put insulation below these heat mats, and then I put the heat mats on top of the insulation, and then put these trays filled with the soilless mixture and put that on top of it. Unfortunately, these heat mats don't turn off at a reasonable temperature, and it overheated these. And so I initially started all of these two of the trays on February 24th, and that ended up cooking the sweet potatoes, so I had to discard those. And I started them again the second week in March without insulation below the heat mat. I did have the heat mat on initially. It's been off now for a couple of weeks. And this is just soilless mixture in a perforated tray, like I do with all the seeds. And it has a carrying tray, a non-perforated tray, and then a perforated tray. And yesterday I just watered all of these, and I really gave them a good soaking. Now, you don't necessarily want to have the soil really wet on the surface of the soilless mixture like this is right now when you're doing this over a long period of time, because you can get mold or algae growing on the surface of the soilless mixture, and it can introduce disease to the sweet potatoes. But when it gets close to the point where I'm just pulling off all of these sweet potato slips as they emerge, then I don't worry so much. I start really wetting this whole area down. There's good root development coming out of each one of these sweet potatoes, and then the slip will shoot up from there. And so I wait until the sweet potato slips are about this tall, probably 4, maybe even 5 inches tall, and then I peel them off. And with the base of the slips being below the soil, there really isn't any disease that starts at the base of them. Whereas when you're growing the sweet potatoes in jars of water, then you get other microorganisms that can infect the root system of the sweet potato slips. But it appears that we don't have any problems. I've been doing this for 2 years now. With just taking these off, and instead of cutting off the bottoms like I would do when they were in water, I no longer have to do that. So when these ones get a little bit taller, get up to about here, I'll peel those off, and they may have started some roots as well, and you can see a couple here. Here's one here, a couple here as well. So right now the heat mats are off over in here, and we'll go around. So this is the same soilless mixture that like I did my tomato transplants here recently, and the eggplants and the basil, all of these. And down here we can see these are the sweet potato slips here, and you can see I really stick them pretty far down into this soilless mixture, and I peel off most of the leaves as a result, and when I'm putting them in, so that they throw more into developing the roots. And these have worked out pretty darn well. And I just watered this yesterday, and so I soaked it right up to the top. Now this heat mat is on. This is one of the better heat mats. This is a really well modulated heat mat. It's about twice as expensive as the other heat mats, but it works extremely well. It won't overheat your plants. And so these are the sweet potato slips that I've started so far, and so I keep those really pretty darn well watered. Now these ones I soaked pretty heavily yesterday because they're on heat mats and the fans are on in here. I have them off right now, but that will tend to dry out the surface of the soil, which hasn't happened yet. But once this soil surface is dried off, the likelihood of algae or mold starting on the surface is very unlikely as well. Now, unfortunately, we live in such a cold environment that it takes probably, once the sweet potato slips get into the soil, it'll probably take as much as until May 25th, where I'll have lots of nice, beautiful root development on these, and then I can put them right into the soil. I'll peel off more of the leaves at the time that I transplant them into the soil, and they'll do very well. So we get a pretty high success rate. Some of the ones will look really rough when I cut them off and all, but you can see some new growth just starting here as well. Hopefully that's showing up. So that's a look at our sweet potato slip propagation systems we're doing here in a cold, temperate climate. Typically, though, one of the things I would say is you could see that that soilless mixture was completely soaked and saturated, probably a bit more than it should have been where the sweet potatoes are sitting in the soil. I don't like the skin of the sweet potatoes to start showing the moisture on the surface of the sweet potato. And I don't like the surface of the soil to get wet, because then again we can have algae or mold starting to grow on the surface of that soilless mixture. So, but I heavily watered everything yesterday, which was a kind of a big job, excuse me, going through the system. This system seems to work very well for us. When the slips are in the soilless mixture, after they've been peeled off of the excuse me, after they've been torn off of the sweet potatoes themselves, I try to keep that soil, the base of the soil, at least 1 inch of it, nice and moist, really, really nice and wet. The surface of the soil, I like to be dry, and so it'll probably be another week that I'll have the heating mat on the sweet potato slips that are started down there. Then I'll move them up closer to higher in elevation inside of the work area here, and we'll let those sweet potato slips do better. As soon as we start getting some nice warm days, we did have one excuse me. We had one day that actually got over 70 degrees Fahrenheit here this last week. It was great. Open up the windows and the doors. So plants like the sweet potatoes, what I'll do is I'll put those outside, and that'll take care of a lot of the pests that can get started in the sweet potatoes when you're doing this whole process and all in an enclosed environment. We do use fans running all the time, and whenever I do a heavy watering, I do use a dehumidifier in the process, just to try and decrease the humidity in the air, because so much of this moisture is going to come off that soilless mixture as well. So that's about it with the starting the sweet potato slips that we do here. The system's worked out really well for us. I'm pretty happy with how things have worked out. All we have to do is have a nice enclosed area that we can keep the wildlife out of, so we can get some really beautiful sweet potatoes for storing this winter. So if you found this video of value, please give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below, and we'll take it from there. If you're interested in seeing the next stage of it, let me know, and we'll share that with you as well. Thanks so much for watching, folks, and have a great day. Bye-bye now.